It's time for Fully Schooly.
Footy Scooty.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Fully Schooly. If you don't know what Fully Schooly is, it's a two-part special, basically, where I go through the Fully Schooly light novels and the manga and try to take out all that good stuff, all that lore and character development and basically setting information that are from the extra materials that follow the Fully Schooly universe. I know some of you might be thinking, why does, all the extra stuff from Fully Schooly matter, and, how does it all fit in, and if it does, why does it need to be there if Fully Schooly is so subtle and, that you're supposed to really feel all the things it's trying to tell you? I just think it's interesting because a lot of the main staff of the show had a lot to do in the making of these things, so it sort of just takes new perspectives on the same material to sort of give us a bit more information about the characters and the setting and different things that they were thinking about that go into the story but might not be present in the text of the original. That being said, this is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend you go watch it now. It covers the light novels, which follow the story of the OVA much more closely, and it gives you a lot more information and kind of about what the screenwriter was thinking for the characters in there. And of course, if you haven't seen Fully Schooly, then I'm not sure how much this will actually end up helping you, so I highly recommend you go check out the show. It is fantastic. And then come back if you want to learn a bit about the lore. So the manga is done by Hajime Ueda. He's an artist who you may know from the ending themes of Bakemonogatari. And he's done some other manga projects, but this is one that he's mainly known for in the West. So he's really cool, and he's got a really distinctive art style. It's kind of like small toy-esque, little figure of made of clay, kind of like Artist Alley style stuff. I'll put some images up there too. He actually made some clay figures of them in his own almost drawn art style, which I think is really cool, and it's kind of in the omnibus, so you can kind of see that there. Let's see, where is it? It's page something. Yeah, this is the coolest shit. I'll put a regular picture on here, but this is the coolest shit. Should you read this one? Yes. It's really cool because they truncate the story a lot, and it really only goes up until about episode 5, but all the information from episode 6 is sort of spread across. So you really get a much more truncated and really, really punchy version of Fully Schooly, more so than the original. It's a little bit more badass and edgy, if you catch my drift. As you can see, the chapters are separated out a little bit into much more different structure than before. They don't have actual titles. One is titled 1A, and there are different parts of the story. So 2A, 2B, 2C, all the way to 2D, 3A and 3B, 4A and 4B, etc., etc. So in Chapter 1, we have our inciting incident, which is pretty much the same as in the original Fully Schooly. However, there's a lot more upfront sexuality in the dialogue. People will just say very specific and explicit things. When Haruko is referring to, Mamimi and Naoto's relationship, she acts like, oh, well, maybe he's not that into you or something. And she's like, no, he does. He loves getting to see my nipples or something like that. He never comments about how often he gets to see my panties. So he's a good boy and stuff like that. So there's all types of stuff there. Naoto's a little bit more trepidatious about the whole thing as well. So you'll hear him saying we shouldn't be doing this and everything else like that. So he is already kind of having these mixed up feelings. But he's sort of saying them a little bit more directly. What else we got here? Mamimi is a little bit more crazy. So what happens is when Haruko hits Naota, it looks like he's completely dead, and she just kind of drags his body away. And Haruko eventually shows up later, and she finds Mamimi talking to Naota's dead body as if it were alive. And the body is responding in square text blocks as if it's sort of talking from some ethereal existence. But really she's probably just imagining it in her head. So that's weird. And at this entire beginning, Mew Mew is actually watching this entire thing. So that big fat cat's just in the background, watching everything Haruko's doing. And it's actually kind of ominous. Now, after Naoto gets hit by the guitar and he gets knocked out, you think it just goes to the next day, but it's actually an entire dream sequence. But this dream sequence is so realistic to the original Fully Schooly story that it's a little bit confusing because he goes through the same school day that he goes through at the beginning of Firestarter, the second episode. Except when he's home, Kanti is there in an apron and is getting Naoto a bowl of rice, and he's like, oh god, who is this? So he leaves. He doesn't understand why there's a robot there. And as soon as he goes to the river, Mamimi tells him to wake up. So when he wakes up, he actually ends up right at the end of 1A, where he's about to be buried by Haruko because Haruko assumes that he's dead. What was actually happening is that once they moved him to a more secluded place, the robots start coming out of his head. So, fucking Kanti comes out and he starts dragging himself out of his body while the hand is chasing him. So the hand's coming out. And let's see, what do we got here? Oh yeah, so basically Mamimi, because she's awake for this and it's not all about her overflowing and she doesn't pass out during the very beginning of the first Fooly Cooly fight, she actually meets Mamimi here. So the inciting incident for the whole kind of fire starter thing happens right now. So when Kanti first appears, Haruko's in the background on a communicator saying stardate, blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing. But she keeps saying just kidding, because it's sort of hinting at the fact that Ueda is going to sort of take the lore of Fooly Cooly and mess with it since it doesn't really matter in the first place. Now, the hand does end up getting away at this point. The fight doesn't fully conclude here. But you do see Mew Mew still watching. So it's kind of creepy how, the Space Police Brotherhood is kind of always watching Haruko at all times when really you thought it was Medical Mechanica who had more of the panopticism. But it looks like both of them do in this case. Meanwhile, in Chapter 2C, Naota goes home and he sees that Haruko is there living at his house, so that's crazy. And he doesn't want to be any part of the festivities or the party or whatever that's going on because Kamon's just insane. And what ends up happening is that Kanti tries to give Naota some ginkgo nuts because he gets up from dinner early and blah blah blah, and he's like, no, you can't pity me, I don't want any of your pity, and Kanti's just really sad. And it's just kind of funny because Kanti's so nice and helpful in the series, and he seems to really care about Naota as opposed to just kind of being the robotic do-boy. Meanwhile, Gaku and Masashi are talking to Naota about some rumor about a ghost hand that's in the rickety part of town where basically all these houses are kind of dilapidated and everything because they redrew the city lines of Mabase. So they do hint about how Medical Mechanica is sort of changing that whole area, similar to the light novels, where all the old people don't really like Medical Mechanica because of how they're changing the city, because it's actually leaving some people in the dust. And you do see an old woman there who seems to just be homeless, just living there around the same age as Shigekuni. So as the kids are leaving school to go investigate this, Naota sees Mamimi there, but because he's feeling so weird and he doesn't really know what he should do about the whole situation, he actually avoids her at this moment. Ninamori notices this, though, and tries to telepathically communicate that to Mamimi for some reason. She just tries. And it, of course, doesn't work, and she, runs away. So that's a little bit of the dynamic between Ninamori and Mamimi going on. But what happens is, so they get to the dilapidated part of town. They're, looking around for different stuff, and, Gaku and Masashi end up finding some, porno mags, which is what they seem to be originally there looking for in the first place, because they don't stop talking about it the entire time. But what actually happens is that the hand robot is there and a battle will happen. So he's about to, get attacked by this hand and everything, but he, just like in episode 1 of Fooly Cooly, he calls out, in episode 2 of Fooly Cooly, he calls out for Tasku and Kanti appears and he slams down in front of him and the battle begins. This time another cat watches, probably the Takun cat, but it's white this time, probably just for the drawing, I don't know. But it watches this entire battle as well. Then we get to Chapter 2D. So it happens to be on a Sunday, I guess, for some reason. So the scene of Naota just leaning over the balcony or whatever and listening to Kamon go on and on about the deep mysteries of Eva, I guess that takes place on a Sunday. Totally irrelevant, but it is there. And we learn about a lot more sci-fi shit about Haruko, which is not real. She just kind of hints at a bunch of things. Basically, once he goes inside, he hears her talking to Mew Mew and then tries to explain her whole thing, but he doesn't really care, which kind of changes the tone of this version of Fooly Cooly, where it's never shown that he cares or wants to know more about Haruko's backstory within the OVA. But here they make him specifically not care in order to sort of take that part of it away so that you can sort of more focus on the characters and you can feel as though, you know what is important to what's going on. But whatever, he leaves, he goes to hang out with Mamimi and everything, and, he's laying there with Mamimi, and Mamimi's, hugging him from behind and, doing their whole shtick, and Ninamori just happens to walk by. She just walks by, and she sees them, because she followed them, essentially, and she sees them from all the way atop the bridge, and looks down, and she, mouths some words with, a smirk, and Naota thinks she's just laughing at them and is now embarrassed, but Mamimi can read her lips from that far away, and reads that she says, child molester. So they're both kind of dejected at this. Naota feels like he's being laughed at, and Mimi's just oh god, fuck. So that's not good. But then once she goes home, or that is to say, once Naota goes home, he starts hearing like these old ladies in his neighborhood like talking shit about his house, like how random women walk in and out of all that stuff or whatever. So you get that feeling of Mabase being this kind of older town with a lot more gossiping people. It's kind of a small town, so word gets around. So in that time, the second horn has grown, which is like the forward one coming out here and the back, that type of thing. The fire starter horn, essentially. And they hear about a fire happening in Mabase, so Gaku, Masashi, and Naota end up going to investigate it, really. So they go there, and there's a big group of people, and Mamimi's there too, like looking at the fire and all that stuff. And Naota ends up talking to Masashi and Gaku about how, he saw that fire when he was young, and that's the whole thing we got a big backstory about in the light novels, where they heard the fire and Tasuku ran out, and so Naota followed him, and that's how they met Mamimi. But they end up going back to Naota's house because Gaku ends up basically taking Naota's hat off to get him to stop like hiding things from them. Once they see the horn, they do make jokes about it and stuff, and like they're sort of inspecting it because Naota doesn't know much about what it is either. And they're just they're making little jokes. They're kind of trying to figure out exactly what it is. They're like saying suggestive things about it because it's the most dick-like horn of the entire Fooly Cooly franchise. Just the way it's drawn. Just look at it. It almost looks. It almost looks pornographic in the way that, well, whatever. Anyway. The thing about this scene that is great, though, is that Masashi secretly takes a marker out and draws a face on the horn, and the face just looks kind of funny. So in the middle of, like, a normal conversation, like, a serious but not, like, dead serious tone, he just holds up a mirror in front of Naota's face, and Naota sees this, and he tries not to laugh, but he can't help it. So we get this one, like, half-page panel of Naota just laughing with Gaku and Masashi, who are also just laughing, and it's really nice, because you never see Naota just genuinely enjoy himself without any kind of, like, ulterior motive or tone in the scene or anything like that. Yes, the panel says, "To be a boy is to be a fool, and to be a fool is pure bliss." And I just like that, even though that quote seems to come out of nowhere. There's no established narrator. It's just over this panel of them laughing. But what I really like about it is just how Naota is always seemed as this like very dramatic character where he is always part of the drama of the scene. So you can never really detach him from basically his inciting incident and everything he feels to get that more human quality. And that's just an aspect of Fooly Cooly itself, like the story and the OVA itself. So I don't hold anything against the story for that. I just think it's really interesting to take it in another dimension and find it elsewhere. So right as that whole little friendship bonding moment is going on, Haruko crashes through the door again and just basically picks Naota off vaguely to go on some joyride. Now, the significance of the joyride is that they're going to drive off of a cliff towards like basically some dirt road area, and this is somehow Haruko's power that allows Naota to see, basically get visions of shit about Mamimi that basically tell him the answer that Mamimi is the arsonist. So I know that's really weird, but that's how he sort of gets the inciting incident to go and like find Mamimi and make sure nothing's going on. But that just adds another thing that Haruko can seemingly do. But I really think the reason why they did that is to just truncate the story a little bit more so they don't have to go through beat after beat after beat of how he puts it together. You know what I mean? Okay, so now that Naota has come to this big revelation and, after this entire, like, stretch of 2A through 2E, Naota has, come to the revelation that Mamimi is the arsonist and he's got to figure out something he can do. So, he goes to school normally. At the beginning of this chapter, though, we get this nice little Shigekuni moment, Naota's grandpa, how he wakes up and, Miu Miu's there or whatever, just like he always is. And he just sort of does this whole thing, but he kind of contemplates to Miu Miu about how he goes to bed really late and he suddenly gets up early, like even sleeping is hard, so why is he even alive? That will be important later. Meanwhile, Naota's in school, and, he's worried kind of about Mamimi, and he's thinking about what he can do, and, like, maybe she's in danger. Hopefully, like, if she gets caught, maybe, she is a minor, so she might not get in too much trouble. She will. But, that type of stuff. And, we get one Miyajun moment as well, where she, out of nowhere, just, like, grabs Naota's leg to, like, inspect it if there's hair, and, like, makes some weird comment about, like, guys aging into gross old men really early. She really plays almost no part in this comic, but I just wanted to mention it once since we've kind of been keeping up with her throughout the rest of the series. Then, of course, Haruko shows up in school, and basically she just is there as a device to get Naota out of school and into the next chapter. But everyone sees her, and now everyone's kind of talking about how the Vespa girl is, like, hanging out with Naota and pulling him out of class and all this stuff. And this is where she must have gotten the ukulele, because she uses it in, like, the next couple chapters. I don't know. Haruko must have been sensing some, like, NO activity or something, because she just kind of pulls Naota out of class and drags him over to this field where they guess that Mamimi is somehow. Like, they say something about being at the cultural festival, but really they're just at, like, in front of a shrine. Like, they're going up, like, the stairs, and then there's, like, a little shrine gate, and they go to it, and then it's the fucking croquet park. So I don't fully understand the significance of croquet itself, but this is a theme that was mentioned in the light novels as well, that Medical Mechanica owns a croquet park. And I guess Shigekuni and his old childhood friend, both play croquet there. And even Haruko, like, mentions how croquet is, like, a sport of malevolence, how they, like, knock each other's balls around, and the balls are representative of their souls and shit. So, croquet. Very similar to papaya-flavored bubblegum, or papaya-flavored bubblegum for brains, or papaya-flavored explanations. That's another fooly-coolyism you can add on. So, it's at this moment, Kanti is already there, hanging out with Mamimi. They've kind of hit it off a little bit. They're talking. However, you can talk to Kanti. But this is where the crab robot shows up. So, the actual, the other rest of the body from the hand. The hand used a lithotripter. This used hyperbaric oxygen therapy, all that stuff. So, this crab robot comes out of the ground, but it doesn't really know what to do. So, it just kind of, like, stands around and looks ominous for a little while. It seems like because Naota is, like, so ambivalent in his head that has changed it somehow. It changed the nature of the crab because it doesn't seem to want to move or attack or anything. But once it does, Kanti eats Naota, and this is when the first sort of, like, red Kanti moment happens. So when Kanti's fighting the crab robot, Naota goes inside Kanti, and he has to take this, like, little plug, and it goes, like, directly into his eye, instead of, like, being the light bulb or, like, the pin that, like, pierces the back of his head and the other things. So that's really weird. And later, he doesn't even know if he's the one controlling Kanti or if it's the other way around. So, which will matter later, but for now, it's just interesting to note that there is some kind of dichotomy there, where Kanti does seem to be a little bit more in control, but Naota is conscious of what's going on, as opposed to other things where he completely blacks out and doesn't remember. So when Kanti's fighting the crab robot, he actually, like, goes over to the side and, like, has to pull out, like, a bat to, like, attack with. But they make it very sexual, where, like, Kanti's wearing pants for some reason, I don't know why, but, like, they have to remove his pants because that's where, like, that cannon thing comes out of. But instead of it being a cannon, it's, like, this detachable bat that he gets to go in and, like, whack people with. So, much more overtly sexual there when coming into, like, the swinging the bat imagery as opposed to cannons and guitars and all that stuff. Now, another huge moment for Shigekuni is that in the middle of this, like, while the battle is going on, Shigekuni is there, like, playing croquet with his friend, and we get this whole flashback about what's going on, in the early days of Mabase before, Medical Mechanica got there. And Shigekuni and his friend are kids. You can kind of tell who is who. Well, you can tell who is who, but you can tell this by the similarities of their character design. How you can tell who Shigekuni is that he looks exactly like Naota. And they do this purposefully because they make sure that you see Shigekuni as a kid, like 12 years old, like smoking a cigarette, as Naota's character design, just so that immediately this is way back in the past. We're kids who are old people in the future. We get some really interesting character details about Shigekuni here. How things were really tough. It looked like they had to drown some people who were sick for money or something. Or it's very vague. We don't know why they ended up having to drown people, but they did, and they got paid. And Shigekuni talks about how he really likes America and how some Americans gave him a baseball glove and invited him to play baseball. So he's really interested in baseball and everything. While the other guy, he's a little bit more stuck up about his Japanese pride and everything, and how his family is kind of they're very honorable, and Shigekuni is who needs all that, whatever. So that's sort of their dichotomy there. But it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens to them later in the story, because they both end up teaming up for a very interesting decision. So now we're going to move to Chapter 4A. So Naota's getting a little more jealous of Kamon. Kamon's selling Kamon Mabase, and things are just getting weird in that household. So when he goes to school, he goes to the nursery, the infirmary, however you want to call it, the nurse's office. He goes there really early in school and tries to get some early rest or whatever. He's chilling. And he rolls over, and it turns out he's in the same bed as Ninamori, and you see the bump on his head like almost connect with her head, and that's how you know that their NO channels are connected. So immediately from that, okay, this is definitely going to be about Ninamori. This is where the whole Marquis Dukaraba thing is going to come up. Meanwhile, Kanti and Naota are actually like even bonding, like they're literally playing catch, like with baseballs and everything like that. They're really hitting it off. They're having a good time. Naota keeps asking him questions, but Kanti can't answer because he's just a robot. Meanwhile, Ninamori develops her robot, which is like this weird balloon thing that grows to be like the shape of a hat with two weird tendrils coming around, which she eventually is able to control. So it's not the lemon squeezer robot at all. But what ends up happening is the reason why she's so upset about Kamo Mabase is because it's actually just a hit piece about the whole scandal and everything, but the bitch secretary is not the person who is the other woman here. So she's really just mad about the reputation and everything, and the whole parents' divorce doesn't really come up as much as it does in the light novels. Which leads us into 4B, where Ninamori realizes, like, this isn't a dream, I'm actually having this robot above my head and everything, and it starts to get her emotions running high and everything, because she knows this weird stuff is probably linked to Naota, so she seeks out Naota and Kanti and starts attacking them. Kanti, of course, eats Naota, and it's this sort of, like, back and forth whatever until they realize, like, they kind of come to a mutual understanding. They decide not to, like, attack each other, really, so they can just have a dialogue. What this ends up leading to is that they go and meet the secretary, basically out in public, and sort of, Ninamori gets like, she gets hers, she gets right up in her face, like, with this weird robot thing, and says, like, how does it feel to be such a bitch? Like, that type of stuff. So it's this really interesting sort of intimidation factor, but really this huge crowd sees all their robots and shit, and now, like, what is gonna happen? So they see all this stuff, it's a huge thing, and now they're running away because everyone's like, oh no, like, they have links to Medical Mechanica, they're weirdos, like, this type of stuff, so they end up becoming almost fugitives. Now, in between this, as we're learning this, we get this entire flashback to Amorao and Kitsurubami coming to Shigekuni's house and asking him about Naota. Now, the thing about this is that Naota never actually meets Commander Amorao or Kitsurubami. He just gets talked about by them, to Shigekuni. And what they're saying is they're trying to explain to Shigekuni what NO is and, like, how serious the situation is. And they end up compensating him for basically Naota's abilities to control NO. So in this situation, Naota and Ninamori are people who end up being able to control NO as opposed to just being really good portals and, like, tools for other people who know how to use it. But since we don't see the Interstellar Immigration Bureau sort of, as a big actor or a big player in this story for the manga, we can only assume that they're working with the Galaxy Space Police Brotherhood to sort of influence how Haruko goes about her job. Okay, so after Ninamori and Naota sort of escape and, like, they have to stay a night in a hotel and everything, and then they slowly make their way back to the Nandaba household, Ninamori doesn't really have anywhere to go, and Kamon's a piece of shit, so he doesn't really care what happens, so they all sort of end up going up there, and Mamimi's there too for some reason. So Naota finds out about, Kamo and Mabase and how he was actually working with the secretary to put out the magazine and sort of ruin Ninamori's father's reputation. So that's the secretary's whole deal. She's sort of had a hand in, Kamo and Mabase coming out as opposed to actually being the other woman. So that's why Ninamori hates her. Probably a little bit of a different thing about Ninamori than... It's a little different from how It's a little different from how Ninamori almost saw something of herself in the secretary in the light novels and maybe even the show, whereas here, it's just a completely different type of hatred. So Naota's mad at Kamon about that, so his house is basically just this big, crowded, like, awful scene where he has to deal with either Mamimi, who he's having trepidatious feelings about and hasn't talked to, really, Ninamori, who's this girl in his class who really, really likes him, and it's kind of obvious, and, things happen there, and Kamon, who's just a total dick. So he's there, and he can't really get any privacy or time to himself. He was out before, and he was looking at, like, Gundam models and stuff for some reason. I guess he's into those in this world. And, he's looking for a place, He opens his door, and Mamimi and Ninamori are just there in his room already, and he just can't even take it. So he leaves, and he chills with Kanti and says, I just wanted a place to build plastic models, and now I have nowhere, you know? And, it's funny because Kanti just sort of leans over and, like, comforts them or whatever. Alright, chapter 6A. This is where some shit happens. This is where probably the most famous moment from the manga happens that everyone already knows about because, it's a big discussion topic, but we'll get to it. So, at the beginning of this chapter, Kamon tries to, like, look inside Haruko's guitar case, to which Haruko just brains him over the head with something, to which he's completely fine, which is weird, because, we never get to know what's inside the guitar case later on whenever he's talking to Naota, who's also very annoyed at him still, and, he's talking a lot about how Haruko is, like, so beautiful, and, like, all this other stuff about, like, where his life is going, and then says, Naota, how would you like a new mother? And he says, as if, or like something like that, and actually beats Kamon over the head, takes the bat directly to his face, blood comes out, and Kamon fucking dies. Yup. Right as this happened, they get a huge 2-page spread. One page is just Naota looking on, and the other page is Kamon, like, making his regular ass smiling face with the sunglasses, but fucking blood is coming out of his head. And it's like, yeah, he actually killed his dad this time. No robots here. Just as this happens, the phone rings. Naota goes over and picks it up, and it's Tasuku. He can barely talk. He has no clue what's going on. He just listens and listens, and then some girl gets on the phone, probably the woman from the picture, from the text of what she's saying. Her name's Wendy, apparently, and I think she says something like, I'm so high right now. And he's, like, listening to this shit while he just killed his dad. And he's talking to his brother who doesn't even know, and his brother's like, oh, I don't think I'll be able to make it for New Year's. Now just probably like, thank God, because I just killed Dad. So that's crazy. So he hangs up, and the police come and arrest him. Now, of course, the police come, and we see all this like weird imagery of like how the police show up, and it's like all in different order and stuff. But what we really know from reading the light novels is that the police station is a complete front, at least at this point, for the IIB. Amaral works underground in the police station in their underground war room to do all the stuff. So, really who's in custody of him is probably the IIB. While all this is going on, Haruko just walks right up to the Medical Mechanica plant, goes right through the doors, sees 2 girls, and just says, oh, hey, I'm coming up. Tell them Haruha Raharu from the Galaxy Space Police Brotherhood is here. And they're just like, okay. And I'm just sort of like, hold on, what is the nature of Medical Mechanica here if she can just walk in? And I think the reason is because, she has a bargaining chip in Kanti, because Kanti is, like, partly atomisk, but we'll get there. So she goes up there and starts negotiating with someone who is completely off panel. We never see who it is, but she's just talking about, like, you're not the only ones who's looking for proprietary ownership and stuff like that, like referring to atomisk as a bargaining chip in the whole thing. But during this time, we see the hand robot from episode 5. The hand robot comes up from out of the ground underneath the Shigakuni Bakery, Naota's house, which is then on its head. But the whole reason this happens is because Mamimi is feeling so obsessed and like so crazy that she's just walking through and she's seeing people like turning to demons, because she's still in Endsville, by the way. She's still completely obsessed with Firestarter. She's just like, her vision of other people is starting to warp, so she just walks into Naota's house with the Takun cat and sits down, and this somehow, like, her whole being in the way her, NO channel apparently works is that this allows the robot to continue. And this is what's called stabilizing the terminal core. At least that's how Haruko puts it. And, she's just got this cat on her lap that's just, like, staring out, like, completely blankly. So, whether that's the Takun cat or some other thing, we don't really know. So, another thing is that Shigakuni and his friend actually rescue Naota from the police after basically the police station gets destroyed by the hand robot. And he says, like, Naota, it's okay that you killed him. I'm just saying, like, Kamon was a total bastard. We're going to get you out of here. So he pulls Naota out, and they go run away. And he eventually leaves to go find Mamimi, who is up in the house. So he basically meets up with Kanti and Haruko after all this to go up to this robot and basically either save Mamimi or do something. Now, meanwhile, Shigakuni and his friend are executing another message that they had from Haruko way before, given a communicator earlier in the manga. And basically they get convinced to go into Medical Mechanica and hold up the place and basically set off the detonation. basically set off a bomb inside there to basically stage a coup between Medical Mechanica, the actual plant, and the satellite up in the sky that's shaped like a fucking pitching machine, similar to the satellite that comes down and throws a ball. Anyway, what goes on here is that it gets revealed basically that the hand robot, with the hat and the house on top of it, is the Brotherhood's super weapon. So it gets revealed that this hand robot, with the hat and the house on top of it, is the Brotherhood's super weapon that they're going to use to counteract not just Medical Mechanica, that's going to get blown up by Shigekuni, but also the satellite that's all the way in the sky that shoots basically baseballs. It looks like a pitching machine out there, and they're going to take care of that too. And just as all of this is about to get executed correctly, she hits Naota over the head once, and she turns around, and Naota, and like a cat is coming out of Naota's head. And for some reason, this shows that his NO basically ran out and that he's useless. So now Haruko just turns on him and is going to kill him. And he's probably going to kill Mamimi too. And, at one point, he tries to get away, and Kanti tries to, basically he tries to get Kanti to help him, but Haruko just says, Atomisk! And Kanti immediately obeys because he goes over and holds Naota down, and which gets revealed that Kanti just is Atomisk the entire time. Atomisk is just now stuck in Kanti's body while basically they're trying to get his body back from Medical Mechanica. So it's a little bit different from the show. But it does reveal that this entire time, because Atomisk has been stuck in this robotic body and can't really do much, he's trying to have almost a more of a normal life and grow up and think about the childhood he didn't have, because he's just an experiment from Medical Mechanica, and just sort of nurture and care for Naota the whole time. So that's hilarious, because he's just this ungodly being and oh well, domestic life, here I go. But the craziest thing is that Medical Mechanica, the actual plant, does get destroyed right at the top. Shigekuni and his friend just sort of go in there and aim guns at people to let them through. And once they get up there, they succeed. But the thing is that they're inside there, so they end up sacrificing themselves too. So what ends up happening is that basically Naota gets eaten by Kanti, who then goes inside the hand robot and pilots it all the way up through the sky and up to the satellite with this giant bat that's been inside the Galaxy Space Police Brotherhood super weapon robot this entire time, and just bashes that through, which is great. And now they're all above orbit, and they're coming down, crashing down, and everything's going to be great. So so they're crashing down to the ground. Is oh no, how are we going to make it, whatever. They end up smack dab right back in Mabase, but Haruko is not really there. It's just Naota, Mamimi, and Ninamori. That's everyone who's left in the house at that time, and they're just kind of standing around. And the people from Mabase are there, and they're oh, they're not fugitives anymore. They just saved the city. This is great. Yeah, woo, Naota, you saved the city, blah, blah, all this stuff, whatever. And good, it's a happy ending. He goes, okay, well, I have to go now, and whatever. So he starts walking away, but the thing is that he has nowhere else to go. So you're not really sure where he was going to head to. But then out of nowhere, this police guy comes and bashes him over the head. He gets blacked out, and when he wakes up, he's being tied up or whatever, and this police guy, who's completely random, is about to fucking kill him with a huge knife. And just as that's about to happen, this guy gets shot in the head, and his brains get blown out, and you actually see them drawn as little flecks of brain. And where did this bullet come from, you ask? An arm coming out of Naota's head, and it's Haruko. And Haruko crawls out of Naota's head and explains, that whole thing of how I'm not actually Haruko. Haruko left. I'm her superior, Raharu. And this is what's going to happen. Everything's fine. She just had to leave, and you saved the day or whatever. So she leaves. Oh yeah, she absconded because she broke the Arrow laws and is now on the run from the Galaxy Space Police Brotherhood because she, got too involved with Naota and Kamon. Now, another big change here, and this is where the manga ends, is that this Raharu, who's basically just Haruko and trying to explain why, she can't use her real name, leaves her Vespa with Naota saying, once you can get this started, you can come and meet me, out in space. Which I think is really, really interesting because, from the light novels, we know that his mom is also probably part of the Galaxy Space Police Brotherhood. And at this point, Naota doesn't really have anywhere else to go. He has Mamimi, but that's not going to last for too long. And Ninamori is there, so he does care about her, but he really doesn't have anything keeping him on Earth anymore, so he could probably leave and do that. And it just sort of adds a different type of open-endedness than the show does. Ultimately, the manga is really weird, but I like the way it's upfront with all its themes and sort of changes the tone a little bit to be not just more human, but also, a little bit more raunchy as well. So they just sort of added all that type of stuff in. It's less subtle, but it's less subtle in the sexual comedic way, but more subtle in like how it's supposed to affect you and how you're supposed to read the story. It's hard to explain because it has a lot to do with how you're interpreting the art style as well. But I got such like an impressionist vibe from it that it made me feel all types of things. So that's why I really think you should read it, because it's kind of a brand new, like really fresh way to experience a really good Fooly Cooly story. But that's all for today, folks. I don't have much notes on this, so I'm not going to link them in the description, but you should absolutely comment and tell me about how you feel about the Fooly Cooly manga, and if you think any lore from that, or even the light novels, will have anything to do with Fooly Cooly Progressive and Alternative. But other than that, take it easy, guys. See ya. Oh, and one other thing. If you're watching this on May 10th, then tomorrow is the start of the Fooly Cooly 2 Premiere Countdown Pillows Discography podcast, and it's going to be great. So from now on all the way until June 2nd, there's going to be a video a day of me and a couple buddies talking about every album the Pillows have ever made, every studio album that is, the Pillows have ever made up until the premiere Fooly Cooly 2. So now that we've done the radio dramas, the light novels, the manga, and like the entire discography of the Pillows, I think everyone's going to be pretty prepared for when Fooly Cooly 2 and 3 come out. But like I said, that's all for today. See you later.